Here's a model plan to the question: how did the Dawes Plan and the Young Plan help Germany recover in the 1920s? Now, the amount of information you're going to put into this answer will, of course, depend on how many marks the question carries. As you can see at the top, it has appeared in the past as a 9-mark question, which would be 13 minutes. It could appear as a 12-mark, which would be 18 minutes. So use your judgment. But if you pull back and just get a sense of the structure of this particular answer, you've obviously got your introduction and conclusion, and then there are 4 main paragraphs in the middle. So let's just get a quick sense of what those different paragraphs do. First of all, paragraph 2, that is about the Dawes Plan. It basically is about the reorganisation of reparation payments. Paragraph 3 is also about the Dawes Plan, but that is about the loaned money. So break the Dawes Plan down into two paragraphs, because basically it did 2 things. One, it reorganised reparation payments. Secondly, it arranged for Germany to borrow money from the USA. Your next paragraph moves into the Young Plan of 1929, and what that paragraph does is it talks about the reparations. So what you've got there is you've got 2 paragraphs on the Dawes Plan, 1 paragraph on the Young Plan, and then what you do in the next paragraph, paragraph 5, is you talk about both the Young Plan and both the Dawes Plan and the Young Plan, but you're assessing those plans. In other words, you're asking the question: did they succeed? Did they work for Germany? And what you really want to focus in on, in fact, is that they both created problems for Germany, so that although in the short term it seemed as if they were helping Germany, in the long term they did create problems. So learn that structure. Again, just to reiterate those 4 paragraphs. You've got paragraph 2 on the Dawes Plan, paragraph 3 also on the Dawes Plan, they're looking at different features, paragraph 4 on the Young Plan, and then paragraph 5 is an assessment of both the Dawes Plan and the Young Plan. So you've got a clear structure there. Right, let's zoom in and look at the particular aspects of it. So first of all, the Dawes Plan. Okay, this first paragraph is about how it reorganised reparation payments. So it was a deal between Germany and the USA. It was supported by France and Britain. The amount that Germany had to pay was reduced, and it was matched to Germany's capacity to pay. So learn these figures. For the first 5 years, annual payments were staggered. So in year 1, they started at £50 million, which was quite low, and by year 5, they had increased to £150 million, which was obviously higher, and they moved up in stages over the 5 years. And thereafter, year 6 onwards, annual payments were linked to Germany's capacity to pay. Now, in return for that, the French withdrew their troops from the Ruhr, because remember, the French had occupied the Ruhr, Germany's industrial region, in January 1923. Now, that's the first aspect of the Dawes Plan. You then move into the next paragraph, which is another feature of the Dawes Plan, which is the money that Germany borrowed from the USA. So the Dawes Plan included a provision for the USA to loan $3,000 million to Germany. Now, the way this worked is it effectively kick-started the German industry, which of course had ground to a halt in 1923. It provided money that got the economy moving again after those difficult years. That then generated wealth. Businesses are now beginning to trade, they're generating profit, and that wealth that was created, of course, the government could tax that wealth, and then the German government was able to use that additional wealth to pay off their reparations to France and Belgium. So the loans were linked to the reparation payments. Quite a lot of figures there. $3,000 million loans, £50 million per year, £150 million per year, etc. You just have to learn those statistics. It really strengthens your answer if you can include the statistics here. You then move into the next paragraph, which is about the Young Plan. So we're jumping forward to 1929. So 5 years later, another reparations deal was negotiated with the Allies, with the USA and with Britain and France. And what the Young Plan did is it, for the first time, created a time scale for reparation payments. It actually said they will end, and they gave a date, and it was 1988. That was in 59 years' time, because it was 1929, add on 59, it effectively takes you to 1988. So the payments were now fixed, an annual amount, 2,500 million marks a year. So then there again is another financial statistic you just simply have to learn. 2,500 million marks a year, spread over 59 years, and this was less than had been arranged by the Dawes Plan. I think the Dawes Plan was less than that. Actually, scratch that. It was actually 2,000 million marks a year. The Dawes Plan had been 2,500, so pick that one up. 2,000 million marks a year for 59 years. It was not 2,500. 2,500 was the amount with the Dawes Plan. Now, you then move into the next section. Now, whether you include this very much depends on the question and the angle of the question. And how much you want to include on it will depend on the angle of the question. But what you're doing in this question is you're saying that although it seemed to help Germany economically, as indeed it did, in the long term it created problems. Now, there were two types of problems that were generated here in the long term. Firstly, economically, because basically what you want to argue is it created what we call a house of cards situation. The German economy was very closely tied into the American economy. If the American economy was doing well, the German economy would do well. But if the US economy did badly, as indeed it did in October 1929 with the Wall Street crash and the beginning of the Great Depression, then the German economy would follow suit, because Germany would have to repay those loans to America, and that of course is what happened in 1929, leading to the house of cards collapsing. Nice phrase to use, that house of cards, if you can use it. And then finally, point out the political problems. On the right wing, you've got the German nationalists. Now, the extreme right with the Nazis, but next to them was the German Nationalist Party, led by Alfred Hugenberg, a very respectable party representing wealthy businessmen. And the German nationalists opposed both the Dawes Plan and the Young Plan, which they called a second Versailles. They resented it for a range of reasons. They felt it gave the Allies influence over Germany, and indeed it did, because it gave Allies financial control over much of Germany's railways and the German state bank. But most importantly, they saw it as an admission that Germany had caused the war. That's why they called it a second Versailles. They felt that any signature to anything that was connected to reparations was basically like signing the Treaty of Versailles again. So Alfred Hugenberg in 1929 formed a committee to oppose the Young Plan, and part of that was raising a petition, and he managed to raise 4 million signatures to that petition. Now that gave him the go-ahead to organise a referendum, like a national vote. Do you agree on the Young Plan? In the end it failed. Only 14% of Germans agreed with him. But the important thing is that Hugenberg needed a partner in that campaign, and he partnered up with Hitler and the Nazis. Now Hitler and the Nazis, of course, in 1928, 1929 were relatively small, relatively unknown. But that gave a great opportunity to Hitler, because Hugenberg was a media tycoon. He had a huge empire. For example, he owned lots of newspapers. He owned a cinema chain called UFA. And in that campaign against the Young Plan, it gave Hitler an opportunity to get his photograph on the front pages of newspapers across Germany, and the Nazis were appearing in newsreels that were played in cinemas. Remember, in those days they didn't have TV, people went to the cinema for news. And all of that was happening literally weeks before, suddenly, in October 1929, the Wall Street crash. So the Nazis got a lot of publicity just before the Wall Street crash, which certainly helped them. And then finally, the conclusion. Pull together the threads of your answer. Get those phrases, short-term and long-term in. Short-term gains, long-term problems. The short-term gains were economic. Use the word economic, okay? But politically, in particular, it did create problems, because it gave groups, extreme right-wing groups such as the Nazis and Hitler, a platform to challenge the Weimar government. Okay, so lots of information for you there. It depends on the number of marks. I hope that was useful to you.